Hola, everybody. Welcome back to the Chats with Yvonne podcast with me, your host, Yvonne Podcast. I talk about public speaking because I love it and I want to help you love it too. In this podcast, I share my public speaking journey and connect our unique experiences as Latinas to our relationship with the art of public speaking to help us more confidently show up, get on stages, and get paid. Today's segment was inspired by a conversation I had with Estrellita from Cafecito con Estrellita. She runs and is the voice of a Latinx podcast that guides first-gen scholars through the path of education. If you haven't heard it, please go ahead and take a listen. It's amazing. And this conversation that her and I had happened a while ago. We got to talking about some of the jobs we've had, and of course, I nerd out about all things public speaking and the platform we have here on Chats with Yvonne. And I started talking about how I felt that public speaking really showed up for me in every single job that I've had. So today I want to talk to you about my job history. I want to walk you through that and also share the biggest lessons I've learned from each of my jobs. Because I actually found that those lessons are all related to who I am as a public speaker today. Along the way, we'll also meet Dr. Norma Reyes, career mindset coach, as a way to highlight the journeys and themes that may come up for many of us trying to figure out what to do with our lives. I hope it can help you see that in your job history and wherever you are currently, you are also practicing the art of public speaking and getting better at it every single day. Because think about it. What if we were able to see our jobs as a way of getting better at public speaking? Once you become aware that you actually do it all of the time, maybe we'll start to rediscover our confidence in the art. Now, in my career, I've always felt the pressures of finding out what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. O sea, tener mi carrera. Maybe we can all relate to this a little bit. And the older I get, the more I realize that yes, there are things I'm passionate about, and I might even be great at them, but I'm also ever evolving. Meaning, I love to learn. I'm in a constant state of learning and just change. I'm always exploring my interests because I feel that if I don't, I'm not only doing myself a disservice, but the rest of the world también. I'm the oldest daughter, and whether I've put the pressure on myself or it's been put on me, I have always felt like I needed to be the example. I've had to figure out a lot on my own, and it's made me who I am, sí, claro. But it's also deviated me away from the parts of me that I am clawing to get back right now. As I mentioned, I've always felt pressures to figure out what I wanted to do it first so that those that come after me have a blueprint. But I myself have never had a blueprint. And I think that pressure of wanting to be successful and wanting to make sure that I set a good example really set me up to be in incredible spaces, right? And have incredible opportunities. But somewhere along the way, I also stopped having fun. So I fear sometimes that I haven't explored my hobbies. I often ask myself things like, who am I outside of the work that I do? Outside of my accomplishments? Do I even like what I do, or am I just hella good at it because I've been doing it for so long? How do you know when you've found a career? And what about when it's time to move on from an opportunity? We'll get to answering these questions, or at least trying to get to the bottom of them and understand them a little bit more deeply, while I go down memory lane and tell you about the biggest lessons I've learned through my jobs and how they set me up to be the public speaker I am today. All right, y'all, so let's start off with my first job. And when I say my first job, I mean this is the job that paid me first. My first official job. And this was at a nonprofit that my mom worked at. So funny enough, I had my first job with my mom, which is a really unique experience. And what I did there was, at first I came in as an intern because my high school made us do these work learning experiences and we had to find a place to intern at. I remember when I was in high school, I think I was a junior in high school. No sé si era por laziness. I don't know if it was because of logistics, like how I would get to the internship or anything like that. And working at my mom's place was the easier thing to do, but I ended up working there. And they wanted to create a project from it. And how lucky am I that I got to work with my mom for my first job ever. At first it wasn't paid. It wasn't a paid internship, but then I kept coming back with them every summer to do the internship. And essentially what I did was I was a front desk intern. I started off as the intern that kind of sat wherever there was space, and then eventually transitioned to being at the front desk to help answer phone calls and file and shred lots and lots and lots of paper. I feel like this type of internship that I had here is what a lot of us probably had back in the day. Like, our title was something like social community manager or something, but really we just shredded paper. It was a really unique experience to have this first job be alongside my mom. O sea, tenía lonche todos los días. I didn't have to wait. I didn't have to worry about what I was going to eat porque ahí estaba mi mamá, which was, I understand, a very huge privilege. So essentially, what the nonprofit does is they help people find employment, and they have various different programs where, let's say, maybe you don't have a high school degree and you want to get into construction. They have a program for you to do that. Or you need help with your resume. You need help with actually applying. And the demographic of a lot of the people that went here were a lot of Latinos, and a lot of low-income Latinos were part of the population, and many of them older, that didn't really know the language. And so helping them out with their resume and their applications was a huge part of what the counselors did. Eventually, because I had been there for a while and, well, I'm kind of good at what I do when I set my mind to it, I was able to help people not with their resumes, but more so submitting applications online, because that was a big thing. A lot of people didn't know the languages, but a lot of jobs were starting around that time to require you to fill out an application online. And so I helped a lot of people with that. As part of my project for school, I created a brochure for the nonprofit that listed all of the different services that they had, because I found that they had a lot, but not all of them listed in one place. And I'm pretty sure they had them digitally, like on their website, but the population that we were helping was not on the internet. They didn't have access to computers, right? And so they needed things in hand, something that they could take away with them. This was probably one of the coolest and most memorable projects I worked on here, because it really, I created it. I essentially designed a brochure, and people were actually taking it and using it, and the nonprofit used it for a little while longer after I was gone. And like I said, I was at the reception, so I was the very first person that people saw when they came in through the doors, and I liked it. I really did enjoy talking to people. And this is when I found that I can be an introvert, I can be shy, but when I'm called upon to help my community, it's como que, no sé, this switch just goes off. I'm like, okay, like, it's time. And I also I would consider myself to be a kind person, so I like making people feel welcomed. And the biggest lesson that I learned here was to meet people where they are and be kind. People are there for a service, so help them to the best of your ability. And I carry this with me throughout my entire public speaking journey. La gente que iba ahí te necesitaba. They needed you to help them. They were desperate for work. A lot of them sometimes would have the type of jobs where you have work for a week straight, and then you come back and there's no work. Or people were looking for janitorial jobs or dishwasher jobs, working at a restaurant, and they needed our help. Recently at work, someone described my public speaking aura as being kind and welcoming. They described my aura in general, and they were talking about me being up on stage and how they hadn't met me in person yet, but they felt that I was very welcoming and very kind. And I think I learned that from this job. I think I learned that throughout my entire life, but this job really solidified that for me. I want people to feel welcomed. I want people to know that I am there for them and that I will be serving them. And honestly, it's important for people to know that kind of stuff from you. Everywhere else in the room, even when you're up on stage, everywhere else in their lives, people can experience discrimination. People can be judged. People can just have a bad experience out in the world. But what can you do to, in that moment, when you have them in those 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is, however long your public speaking is, or however long you're in contact with people, while you have them there, what do you want to make them feel? And how are you meeting them where they are? Right? As a public speaker, you have to think about your audience. Where is my audience's understanding of this topic? What do they care about? Because their understanding of the topic and the things that they care about will greatly dictate the way that I talk about it. Now I want you to meet Dr. Norma Reyes from her perfectly on brand office. Her color is this beautiful teal. I think that's how I would describe it. She's also wearing a teal shirt. She calls herself a first gen everything. Both her parents are from Mexico, who came here as immigrants to provide and have a better life for their kids and themselves. Dr. Reyes lives in Texas with her husband and 3 kids. She's the first in her family to earn a degree, and her list of accolades includes being a licensed therapist and having a PhD in education. Dr. Reyes has a passion for helping Latinas see the infinite career opportunities in front of them. She does this by teaching Latinas and women of color how to identify the limiting beliefs that are holding them back from the career growth they want, and helping them develop a career mindset that focuses on attracting the career success they deserve. Let's hear about Dr. Norma Reyes' first time public speaking.
Oh man, I am trying. I think I just have like a recollection of memories. Like freshman year of high school speech class, and then college. Like those are the ones that come to me. And my thoughts are about like the topics I decided to speak on. And I'm not a person who I'm not a person who's like super social activism, right? Like it's just not that's just not me. But I have found that when I am speaking, I talk on those. Like those are things that I like to talk about in platforms. And so my freshman year of college, I decided to speak on the fact that statistically speaking, I didn't belong in the university. And this is the time that I had never really processed that. It must have been my future self putting that in me because I never really thought about it afterwards either. But I felt it really important to speak on things that were very deep and meaningful to me. I'm still kind of reflecting back, like, gosh, how vulnerable I was willing to be because I literally said that statistics said that I should be pregnant and on welfare because my parents were immigrants. And as a first gen, graduating high school is not something that is expected statistically. And here I am now, not at the time, but now with my PhD, just all these statistics, like it's like a point of a point of a point that I shouldn't be here. Um, yeah. And I mean, and I think I continued that trend throughout that class. Now I want to go back and see what I got in it. I better have gotten an A.
I love hearing the answer to this question because you realize how you started definitely informs how you practice the art today. And that's why my framework, Reflect, Connect, Share for mastering the art of public speaking works. Just saying, y'all. So I asked Dr. Reyes why working with our communities was so important to her and why working in particular with Latinas on career and career mindset was so crucial.
Two of the biggest ones are that one, we will be a quarter of all women soon, like 2050. So we need to be doing the work, we as in Latinas, all women of color, to prepare the path for those women and men and Latino men as well, um, in a way that it hasn't been prepared. And then the other reason is actually, and I might cry. I'm not a crier, but I might cry because as I went on my run today, it's midday and I live in a pretty I would say middle class, like middle to upper middle class environment. The homes are here in Texas, which Texas homes are a little bit cheaper, but they're like 400, 500K. So that's like up there in Texas, right? And so I'm running midday. It's like high 90s, pretty hot. And I see some men working and it's, they're doing construction work. They're doing like some work on the home, like on the driveway. And I see them and I think about my father and I'm like, and I know they see me too, right? Like, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword because, I feel for them, but then at the same time, I hope that I give them hope that it's possible, right? Like the labors that they're doing for their children for a better life. I'm the result of those labors, right? Like my dad had a vision for me and my success. And I know it was to live in a neighborhood just like this that he worked. He's a tree trimmer. So, and he still does that now. And, I was like, it was like a full circle moment for me. Like that is why, right? Like I am living my fullest potential and I still have more dreams for myself. But in my dad's eyes, I am sure that I have met his expectation of what he envisioned for me. Like everything he did and sacrificed to get us to this point where I'm at.
I love that story because I think how many of us encounter this kind of experience on the daily, right? Where maybe we are now in positions because our parents came here, because they worked their asses off, right? Where we can have a job and be picky and choosy with it and say, hey, I want this. These are my hours, right? And when you encounter situations like that where you see people where your parents were before, maybe where they currently still are, it can also bring up it can bring up these feelings of, wow, it's amazing. Like my parents did this for me and because of them, I'm here. And on the other end, it's like, there are still people out there that are struggling in the same ways that my families did. So our almost gift to them is just being the best that we can be in our daily lives and even in our careers. Now let's talk about my time in retail. Everybody loves retail. Psych. So I think, and maybe I have this order mixed up. Ya ni me acuerdo. That's how much I wanted to forget my retail experience. Just kidding. I was a seasonal. At one point, I signed up to be a seasonal employee for Macy's. So I didn't work there full time, but I worked there full time during the season of like Christmas. So during this job, I worked in I believe it was the kids and the home section. So this was where all the blankets were, all the home stuff, as well as some of the kids stuff, I think. And I always, for some reason, had the night shift. Like I was always there all day, but I was really trying to make money. Like I wanted to save a lot of money. No tenía carro then, so I would get rides to the mall. And I was always tired dressing like someone's auntie in all black. I'm gonna say that right now. I hate wearing flats, but I always wore flats because you want to look presentable or you want it to look quote professional, but I wasn't gonna wear no heels to be walking around and like fixing stuff up. And people get crazy during the holidays. I remember there was this one time that someone wanted a cobija and she's like, oh, well, the internet says it's in the back. I was like, okay, ma'am, I can go check for you, right? So I went to go check, didn't find it. And mind you, the storage unit at the Macy's that I worked at wasn't really all that packed. So there's no way I would have missed it. And she's like, no, it says it's right there. It says it's right there. I'm like, ma'am, it's not here, ma'am, Anyway, she ended up making a big deal about it. And that day I went home, I was so stressed, when you have like that shoulder stress and your muscles are just all tense. I was like, geez, people get crazy over the holidays. Like I'm just a person, right? I really loved learning though. And I learned really quickly. I liked clocking in and clocking out. Picking up extra shifts was my favorite part because I needed the Christmas money. But I kind of liked that, 9 to 5. It wasn't 9 to 5, but I liked being able like, okay, let me clock in, do what I need to do, and then clock out and not think about it, which is very different to what I do now. And yeah, I think with retail, anyone can tell you that with a retail job, people have bad days. And it doesn't mean that they're bad people. People also have expectations. And sometimes you can fulfill those expectations, and other times you just won't be able to. And the reason that I think that lesson has made me a great public speaker is because I understand, again, meeting people where they are, but also understanding that my message won't always be for everybody. And you have to understand that too. Your style of speaking, your message won't always be for everybody, but it is for somebody. And in that same tier of retail, I also worked at Target. It was a summer job that I had, I think, in college. And I originally went in there because I wanted to be a cashier. So I applied for the cashier position. You went through hell rounds of interviews, to be honest. I was like, wow, I was actually shocked by how many interviews I had. So anyway, I wanted to be a cashier, and they actually ended up offering me a job to be a part of the HR program or a part of their HR team. And at the time I said yes because it was $1 more, but to be honest, it was so boring. I wanted to be out with the people. Like, the reason I wanted this summer job at Target was because I wanted to be a cashier and I wanted to be fixing stuff, right? And instead, I was in the back making sure people took their breaks, giving them their checks, customer service, looking stuff up for people on our database that would call, announcing the closing times, which actually that was pretty cool. So the closing times, I'll say at one point, Target was hearing my voice saying, "All right, Target shoppers." What was I saying? I got nervous right now. Oh, honestly, it took me like maybe a good amount of time to practice. When there was no one in the back, I would practice because I knew that closing time was, let's say, like 9 or something. I would start practicing at like 7. Like, okay, let me practice, let me practice. Target shoppers see, I can't even do it anymore. Target shoppers, thank you for shopping with Target. Our doors will be closing at 9 p.m. Please make your way over to the cashier for your final purchases. Like, stuff like that. I thought that was super cool. That was the coolest part of being back over on the HR side of things. But anyway, so one of the lessons that I learned through this Target job, and mind you, I'm going to preface this by saying I stayed here for 2 weeks. And I know it's super embarrassing, but what ended up happening was I got the summer job, and because their interview process took so long, by the time that I got the job, I'm really bad at saying no, by the way. By the time I got the job, I couldn't say no to it. And it was closer to when my semester was going to start again, so I didn't even account for the travel time. And it was in San Francisco, but I went to school in Berkeley. So it was just logistically wasn't great. So I was there for like 2 weeks. But still, I actually did learn a lot, right? And I learned a little bit more on the internal side of the business, which actually is what I ended up doing now. Like, I stayed on the internal side of the business. I wouldn't necessarily call it HR because I don't really, manage people like that, but I'm still on the internal side of the business, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But whoa, I'll talk about that in a little bit. And the biggest lesson that I learned here was that sometimes what you want isn't what you need. The universe, la virgencita, whatever it is for you, has bigger plans for you. Let them guide you. You're made for more. And the reason I'm saying this is because I went in there wanting a cashier job, wanting just to do what I considered to be just have a little bit more fun interacting with people, right? And the universe was like, no, you know what? We want to introduce you to this new field. And at the time, I was like, it's $1 more. Heck yeah, I'll do it. And also at the same time, the people interviewing saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And now, a clarification, I'm not saying that being a cashier is less than me sitting in the back handing people their checks. I actually think being a cashier is much, much harder work. But what I'm saying is that I went in there thinking I wanted one job and got the other instead, which ended up teaching me a lot more about the internal side of business. And also, I can say that all of those last minute shoppers heard my voice over the intercom, which is like pretty cool. This really taught me, you don't think about it in this way, but my voice literally being shared across however many shoppers were in that Target shopping center is so cool. That's a form of public speaking that I actually, not until I sat down to think about this podcast episode, did I actually think, wow, I was public speaking at Target. And I really also think that this Target experience in particular really set me up for thinking and having the mindset of, okay, I can do more, so therefore should I be more?
I think that's where all of my clients have had that, where they either have had all these expectations that so many external sources have placed on them, and they're ready at that point to decide, like, hey, you know what, my career has hit a point and I'm stuck, and am uncertain where I want to go next. And part of that uncertainty is that they want to break free from those expectations, but it is so hard to do so when you are that person, right? If you go and tell your family, oh, I'm thinking of leaving this job. And I've had a client say that her parents were like, well, you have this great job with a great potential pension. Why would you leave it? And there's no reason. What more could you want, right? Because we are living their dream for us. sometimes that can keep us stuck on what we do. And so I help them overcome that. And where I know that I'm living my dad's dream, but it wasn't ever like you need to do this exactly. My road was very different, right? I don't have those expectations because he didn't know what a professional, all he saw from me was, living in a really nice home, living in a nice community. And how I got there, like there was no, this is how you do it. It was just like a belief that that was possible. So I think that's where I have a different outlook on how I see my career, and really focused on the more we are happy with what we are doing, it's just like this ever ending circle, right? Like if we are passionate about what we're doing, then we can give back more and it'll come back to us. And it's just a two-way street that's always going.
All right, now we're getting into the fun jobs. Like, I loved these jobs. My next job that I want to talk about is I was on Red Bull's on-street marketing team when I was in college. I was a part of the Wings team, and I heard about this job from someone I knew, and I'm honestly so thankful because I think it changed the trajectory of my career interests. This is when I was like, oh my God, I like business and marketing. Of course, it was a little too late because I couldn't major in business anymore, but what I always tell people is that like you should partner your degree, whatever you're doing, with an actual internship and actual experience, because it teaches you a lot about the field, and you end up finding out that you like some things, you don't like other things, and then you can better mold what you want your ideal job to be and look like. At this time, I was essentially, what we did here was we strategically handed out Red Bulls to people so that they could try it and fall in love with the Red Bull cans. If you've had a Red Bull before, you know there's a whole bunch of flavors and stuff, and Red Bull does an incredible job at their marketing. I just love them. Also, at the time, I was the quote Hispanic lead, where I would find events or places where we could find our communities and give them a Red Bull in their time of need. And like I said, I think Red Bull has elite marketing. Seriously, they're so good at it, and being a part of it was awesome because I got to see how creative you can get with marketing and events, and it was just so cool. At the same time, I knew there was such untapped potential in our Latinx community. We are also artists, athletes, and students that are on the go and needed that boost of energy, or at least cool events to go to. And so it was fun being Hispanic lead and being able to find our people and the events that people could go to, and get them to also have fun. We deserve to have fun, to feel like, hey, yeah, companies are targeting us because we got the moolah, baby. It was fun to work on creating moments where we could interact with my community and let them know, like, hey, if you want, this is also for you. We see you, you're a valuable consumer. And I could go on and on about this job. And honestly, if anyone has any questions about any of the jobs that I've done, please let me know. But the biggest lesson that I learned here was work can be fun, and there's a lot more out there than you think. Your perspective is only one of 7+ billion people, however many people we have on earth right now. Be okay with pivoting. Take opportunities that come your way because they're there for a reason. The reason I'm saying this is because I never thought I'd be into marketing. I never thought that that would be what my career trajectory looked like. And yet, when I learned about Red Bull and when I started working there, that's all I wanted to do. And it really taught me, because I worked, to be honest, I worked with predominantly white people. And for such a cool and fun company like Red Bull, it taught me that, wow, we don't have to spend our time or our lives working at a job that is boring, that isn't fun. We can have fun while we work. And this is also where I learned work hard, play harder. But that was just a different mentality and a different, I would say, just an introduction to a different world for me that I hadn't yet seen, because all I knew was work really hard. And your work or your job isn't necessarily meant for fun. It's meant to pay the bills. And this is very true to why I even have the Chats with Yvonne platform. I want to help more Latinas get up on stages and get paid. So if someone reaches out to me about an opportunity and I don't think I'm the best fit for it, I will always recommend one of you. Seriously, if you're out on my Instagram page and I see you and you do stuff, or you've reached out to me about, hey, I have this interest about wanting to speak here or wanting to speak about this subject, I am promoting you. I am telling people about you, because I truly believe that because I have been able to get access to these spaces and my voice is valued in these spaces, it is my turn to give back. In the same way that the way that I got this Red Bull job was through someone that knew me, someone that I knew, someone that said, hey, you should really try this. And it opened up my world, literally. I always thought I was going to work maybe in education or maybe at a nonprofit. That was what I was going to do. And this job introduced me to the creative side of events and the creative side of marketing that I just could not stay away from. So I'm forever thankful for that. We've only gotten where we are through community. And I believe that. There is not one person I believe can tell me that they've done it all alone. Yes, there are moments where we are alone, but the larger parts of our lives, we have some sort of community. We've built some sort of community to allow us to get to the place where we are. So we got to give back. Throughout all of that, though, we want to make sure that you're also honoring your needs. When you think about your career, when you think about your well-being, I feel like when I was at Red Bull, I learned that my needs in a job are that I want to have fun. I want to be challenged. And I don't necessarily need to be crazy passionate about it, but I need to learn and grow from it. Those are my non-negotiables. And I didn't think that I could have those, what I'm calling non-negotiables. I didn't think that I could have those prior to. And with this job, I learned that I am deserving of good things and fun things. What would you say is your advice for getting over the feelings of needing to please everybody, specifically when it comes to your career, to instead focus on pleasing your needs and making sure that you honor those?
So the first thing is really identifying those blocks, because sometimes we don't ever sit down to reflect on them. We may not even realize that a lot of our expectations have been placed on us by external sources, right? The go get a degree. Where did that come from? Was it from you, or was it from all the external sources around you? All of those things, write them down, right? Like write them down and then leave them there for a little bit, because when you write them down, you're going to be in a certain mood and you're not going to be ready to really process all of that. So write all of that down, and then like another day, allow it to process. And then the second day, you write all of your accomplishments. Write down everything that you've accomplished in your career and everything else that you want to put in there. If you've ran a half marathon, a marathon, things that are not necessarily career related, because all of those things are accomplishments that we sometimes maybe don't even think are a big deal. But, does my dad have the time to go? I mean, maybe now he does, but not at my age, like, did he have the time to train for a half marathon? That's a leisure that we are doing, that we don't even think of it as a leisure, but it is. Or the luxury of like spending that money. They're like $100. Yeah, $100 to force you to run and train, right? Like all of these luxuries that we are having because we are living and leading a different life than them. And you have to remember that, these expectations that put on us are from a different type of mindset that we are in, right? It's a more survival mindset. And so then on day 3, I would say finally go back and reflect on those expectations and decide, like, is this an expectation that I want to continue to hold for myself? And then process that. And that's really where it comes from. But it really is that deep work of like, am I really willing to let that expectation go? It could be something like, I'm going to work a regular 9 to 5. Am I ready to let that go if I really don't want to do it? And then whatever next steps come after that.
Now I want to talk to you about, so I worked at a nonprofit called Boss during my college career as well. I had like 10,000 jobs during my college career, so I could go tap into all of those because I was like a college counselor at one point. I worked at my school's gym. I did a whole bunch of stuff. And because we were on a semester system, I got really used to kind of changing things up so that I could try multiple industries. One of those was one of the ones that I kept for I think maybe a year and a half or two, multiple semesters, was this job with a nonprofit called Boss, and it stands for Building Opportunities for Self-Sufficiency. This is where I learned all about social impact in the nonprofit space. And you can look up some of what they did, but they worked with the unhoused population. And I remember going into that job all the time, and I was so inspired by my manager. He truly believed in using business to make an impact. I think oftentimes we think of businesses as being these, oh my gosh, they're just for profit, they're just taking our money and all this stuff. And yes, right, because that's how a business runs, totally. But you can use business to make an impact. I worked with the unhoused population in Berkeley and helped implement programs that help them become self-sufficient. I made brochures and printable content for them. So again, I went back to that creative side of things. And at the time, we were working on this really cool project, and I always remember this. I still have the papers from it too, because I remember thinking, I love this business plan. We were working on a project for a catering service to create a profitable business, that would employ some of the unhoused population in Berkeley. The profits generated from this would go back to the nonprofit and to paying employees. So it was really hard for unhoused people to find jobs oftentimes, right? And one of the ways that this nonprofit looked to help them was by creating jobs internally and being able to pay them. So people would hire us through this catering service for events, and we were so close to Berkeley that was the plan, and they would get paid to it, and all of that would go back to the nonprofit. This was the first time that I had been exposed to the idea of a profitable business whose goal was social impact, created by and for a community. And the biggest thing that I learned here was that you can make money and care deeply about people. I always thought you had to kind of separate the two. I never thought that caring and being in tune with people and being people-oriented was a good business tactic, but it is. There's a way to make sure we're helping our communities generate money and get back on their feet while offering a service that everyone wants, an exceptional service that everyone wants. People deserve second, third, fourth, fifth chances, and a system that doesn't turn their backs on them. As a public speaker, I think that this shows up for me because not only in my career was I able to truly understand, hey, I can make an impact while making money. Like, I don't have to, as I mentioned before, I was like, I don't have to directly work at a nonprofit to make an impact in my community. And this also actually was what inspired me. This project here was what inspired me to get my master's in business. And I didn't know it at the time, right? But I didn't know that it would take me 3 years out of college to actually get it. But everything that I had learned leading up to this and the jobs that I did next after this really solidified. I need to learn the business foundations to be able to talk about it and create them in a different way. For example, this is very similar to how I talk about my public speaking journey. I need to, and I've always needed to understand, and everybody needs to understand the best practices, the whys behind, hey, you should use your tone of voice to do this. It is better to have more images. Don't have too much text in your presentation. Those things are super, super important. And to be able to change the narrative around public speaking and help more Latinas get on stages and help us do less comparing to the white norm, I needed to understand why the best practices were put in place. When were these books written? How did it come to be? Where did public speaking even start? Who did it start with? I needed to understand all of that in order to be able to talk about public speaking the way that I do today. My first big girl job, I guess I could say, yeah, it was my first big girl job, was at Uber. It was right out of college. I think I started a week after I graduated, which don't do that. Like, take time off, seriously, if you're able to, right? Like, I always tell people find what your non-negotiables are. If you have the ability to stay out of work for a little bit, do that. Give yourself a break. Give yourself at least more than a week. Don't do what I did. But this was my first real exposure to tech. My interview happened all over the phone. So, and this was interesting. Typically you meet over, well, now you meet over Zoom or you meet in person. But I'm interviewed with about 5 different people, and it all happened on the phone. They never even met me. They never even saw my face, nothing. They just heard my voice, right? They just heard the way that I answered the questions, but they offered me the position based on those conversations over the phone, which I always thought was really unique. And there is power in how you answer questions, right? They didn't necessarily even have to meet me. And maybe, honestly, that reduced bias. So I didn't expect anything less from the diversity and inclusion team. During this time, I worked on a ton of projects and also learned that while tech moves fast, it also moves slow, in particular on the internal side of the business. And like I said, I've stayed on the internal side of the tech business for pretty much right after this job. So right after college, I've been on the internal side of things. And I can take a deeper dive into my time in tech if anybody wants to, but the biggest lesson that I learned here really is that not everyone is going to see the value in the work you do because they're not ready for it. But it doesn't mean that it's not valuable. And your foot in the door can quite literally be your voice. Use it. As I mentioned, my interview was all over the phone. That is the power in my voice. My voice and my words and the way that I answered things allowed me a foot in the door. And it set me off for the rest of my career trajectory. And I remember thinking during this time, right after college, I'm going to get the job. I have to get it. I need a job. I just kept thinking those things. And I also at the same time cared deeply about this and wanted to get my foot in the door into tech to see what it was like, but also really este era mi granito de arena. This is where I would make an impact. And I asked Dr. Norma Reyes about manifestation and skill set because she talks about manifestation a lot, but also combining your skill sets, right? And the power being within us.
So I would not consider myself a manifestation expert because I feel like that's its whole own set. But for me, what I mean by manifesting, especially since it is manifest your career, it is like the power is within you, right? The power is within you for what you are creating in your career or what you're creating in your reality. There's a whole lot of different avenues that manifestation can come in and a whole lot of different practices. What I do with my clients is doing that, right? Combining their skills, combining their experience, and then their mindset. Because a lot of them, and that's where I feel like the manifesting part comes, right? When you are creating your reality, you have to change your mindset. And so many of them are feeling like I'm stuck. There's not any opportunities for me. And the list, is endless of like, oh, I don't have the right degree, or I didn't finish my degree, or I've been in this job field, or XYZ. And so what I do is really just help them uncover a lot of those mindset beliefs, which anyone can do on their own. It's really just digging deep. You can listen to my podcast episodes as well, where I get you to just kind of think about what are you thinking about your career, right? The one of the biggest questions is when you think about career development, I think blank, right? And you can just repeat that statement over to yourself and then write it down. And that is what is currently guiding and manifesting your current career outcomes. And in order to change that, it really is, your mindset. Okay, how can I begin to change that? What do I have to offer? What am I currently doing? And then what is it that I really want? A lot of us never ask ourselves that. What is it that I really want? We are really good at saying what we don't want and what we dislike in life and what we don't want for our careers. But we never really focus on what we want, right? And then what we focus on grows. So the more that we focus on those things that we don't like, the more we're going to identify them, because our brain is like just a little filter that is, filtering what we are thinking about. And if we're constantly thinking, there's no career opportunities, or they're never going to, select me for an interview, that's what we'll just keep getting. But if we start to change what we are focusing on, start focusing on, okay, here are my skills. And trust me, I'm sure anyone listening to the podcast is a complete badass, because you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you weren't. You are wanting to get to the next level, and you already have everything within you. All you have to do is really start to recognize that and begin that process.
Now, this time I had been at Uber for maybe 7 or 8 months. That was like my full time there. And I was transitioning into, it was a fellowship that then I was transitioning into, could transition into a full time position. And at the time, there were openings at Uber, but they weren't in what I wanted. I wanted to explore that marketing side of the business a little bit more. And I decided to move, right? And I could have stayed. I could have stayed with Uber on the recruiting team or on the internal side of the business, but I was like, I owe it to myself to kind of just go and explore things and see what else is out there. Now, you can imagine why I'd be scared to venture out into something else when I knew that there might be job openings at Uber for me. And yes, they were ones that I didn't necessarily want, right? So I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to that early in my career settle for a job just because it was open. And I wanted to ask Dr. Reyes when to know it's time to move on and how to manage that change, because that's sort of what I was going through. I felt like, okay, I'm in a good position here. I'm getting paid well. They're offering me to apply to these internal positions, and I will definitely most likely get them. But I have this itch to try something else. How do you know when it's time to move on? And how do you manage that change that's about to happen?
Well, I don't know that we ever really get over the fear of change. But something that I like to say is that when we're making our decisions, on our career, there's so much imbalance that fear is the first thing that's going to pop up. And it's going to pop up because it's our security, our safety, and so many other things. And if you think about it, depending, right, who's listening, for myself, my parents came from a survival mode, right? So that's is embedded in me. And so saying I'm going to just decide to quit my job, like why would I do that? There's so many great benefits. It's hard to conceptualize that, hey, everything's going to be okay. So when you are wanting to make a change and overcome this fear, you have to take some time to let intuition guide you. Is intuition telling you to do this, or is it fear? And the way that you really know if it's intuition or fear will always kind of have you, you'll feel it in your body in a way that's like kind of crunching, you hunched over, it's closing you off. Where intuition is more of an open feeling. It's not a pushy feeling. It's not making you go one certain direction or another, but it's just very open and light and neutral, right? That's when like intuition is guiding you. Of course, there's also inspired intuition, which is a little bit different. That's definitely the more excited energy. And then you also asked about, well, how do you know it's time to move on? It's time to move on when you're no longer feeling that joy. Now, sometimes we get into what I call the mundane, in and out, the hustle and bustle of life. That is completely different from no longer finding joy. There's going to be periods in your life that you are in that hustle bustle mode, meaning that you go to work, you show up, you do your best, you get paid, and then you have other life goals that are going on, that your career kind of gets to on hold. You just have to be okay and understand that that's what you had been doing. If you find yourself waking up in a moment thinking, oh crap, like it's been 5 years and I haven't done anything with my job. Well, it wasn't just you haven't been doing anything. You were probably having other life goals, having kids, getting a degree, getting married, moving, all these other things. And the more that you're okay with, I didn't just waste 5 years, and you have that shift, okay, now I want to focus on this career growth. I think that's usually what happens, right? Like kind of like a little light switch goes on, and it's like, ooh, I want to do something different now. And a lot of times we get down on ourselves as to why we hadn't been focusing on it before, when in reality, we were just focused somewhere else. Mindset is completely 100% the most number one important thing. Like, I don't care about affirmations. I do care about them, but I'm saying, like, you could say affirmations all you want, but if your mindset's not in the right place, you're just wasting your time. I literally just like wrote a post about this, and it's like, you can't say I'm capable of reaching my goals and then, have another thought of, nah, I don't really think that's true. Right? You can't have both, because what's going to happen is what you really believe in your heart is what's going to be truth for you. And so that's why you have to work on your mindset. And mindset doesn't mean that you're always happy, because a lot of times we hear you got to have a positive mindset, or you have to have this. And it automatically gets translated to that means I'm always happy. A positive mindset does not equal always happy. I will tell you, I'm not always happy, but I definitely have a positive mindset, a positive outlook to life. What a positive mindset or positive career mindset is one that is believing that something that you want is possible, right? So if you want a new job opportunity, you believe that's possible. And so a limited mindset is one that doesn't believe that's possible. So that's the only differences, right? But once you realize, okay, it doesn't mean that I'm always happy, because that's maybe what someone thinks when they hear positive, the word positive, right? But it's not an always, it's not an all or nothing. We're human. Of course, we're not going to be always happy. That's why we're living this life. We decided to come here to feel these things.
Right after Uber, I would say a week también. As soon as they gave me the job offer, I'd let Uber know, hey, I'm going to leave. And a week after, actually, you know what? It wasn't even a week. I had my last day on Friday and I started my next job on Monday. Like, gosh, I gave myself zero breaks, y'all. Like, this is not good. Don't do that. Seriously. It's especially as like first gen, we think that we have to just work all the time. Don't do it. So my next job was in events marketing. I was handling logistics for grand openings, Dia de los Muertos events. Events were my life for a good year and a half. This job was amazing, incredible, but it was also very tiring. But really, seeing the events come to life with the details that I had thought up was actually so cool. Like, I love that part of events. I am a sucker for conferences. I love the little details. I love going to events. I will spend all my money going to events. I will say, I can never look at the flea market or any event really without thinking about all the work that actually went into it, because I know no matter how simple you think the setup looks, it's not. You need permits, a list of permissions, and oh my God, the vendors. Sometimes dealing with vendors is the hardest part, because everyone has a specific need and you have to figure out how to effectively communicate with each one of them in a way that they will be receptive to. And that's why this job in events marketing taught me that my audience matters. Both the people that experience your event and the people that you are putting the event on for, right? So your clients. Everyone has different needs and you have to cater to them or give them enough to be satisfied so they feel that they had a good experience with it. And this is the same thing with public speaking, right? When you're up on stage, you have a diverse set of people in that audience. Yes, there is something that unifies us all. There's always something that unifies us. You can always find a connection, but you have to realize that everybody has different intentions for wanting to hear you speak. Some people want inspiration, some motivation, some want actual tactical things, actions to go take. How are you serving each one of those needs? Can you serve each one of those needs? Which one of those needs maybe needs to be deprioritized, but which top 3 can you prioritize? What can you realistically do as a public speaker when you're up there? And now the other parts of what I do have for the most part been internal facing, as I mentioned. And recently I asked myself, am I passionate about internal business relations? Or is that just the path that I've gone towards because I have experience in it, but also because I'm just good at it? Like, how do you know if you're passionate or just good at something? So guess what? I took advantage of having a career mindset coach on the line, and I asked.
Well, that's a tough one, because everyone's unique. It's also very hard when you are really good at so many different things, and some of them bring you joy, and then some of them are very easy to you. I would say kind of just start to categorize those between what comes really easy. Like time management comes super easy to me. I just know. Like I know how long it's going to take me to go to the bathroom, or I just know how long it's going to, and it'll be funny because there's just people who don't have, like, to me, my husband, he goes to use the bathroom. I'm like, you're going to be in there for 20 minutes and you're going to complain that I don't have any time. What did you do for 20 minutes? Like, I mean, in bathroom time, I know it's a weird example, but everyone probably understands it. There's the people who, like, I know how long it's going to take me to do stuff, and that's a natural time management. But does that bring me joy? I don't know that it brings me joy. Maybe it brings me more time and I'm able to do a whole lot more than most people. But, you just have to kind of figure out what comes easy to you and natural. And then from those things, what actually bring you joy?
And it's really funny because while going through the list of the jobs I've had in preparation for this episode, I also noticed a pattern for me. No matter how hard I tried to avoid it, my calling, public speaking, always figured out a way to find me. Whether it was with Red Bull, I had to talk to people about the Red Bull can. Retail jobs, right? You're constantly having to communicate with people that are mad at you because you can't find the freaking blanket that they want. At Boss, the nonprofit, you have to communicate with people that may not have the resources or the understanding of technology, and you have to explain it to them. And now let's bring it back to where I have been more recently and where I am today. I used to work at Healthline, and I started off as learning and development, and I had no idea what learning and development was, but I started looking into just wanting to get back into people-oriented things and things that combined events but also people, and being closer to the people, I would say. I later, maybe about 9 months in, I would say, of being on the learning and development team, I moved on to internal communications manager. And that was so much fun. I liked it better than being in learning and development because I felt like I could combine all the things I really liked: connection, community, events, and talking. I hosted our town hall meetings. I was the face for a lot of our internal communications, and that was fun. That was public speaking. I loved it. My least favorite part of the job, and I'll tell you this, was speech writing. I learned that about myself. So as my role in internal communications got closer to, I guess you could say, the higher ups, I learned that I can totally write for others, but it gives me a little anxiety, and I'd rather just write for myself or help someone edit their already existing words. O sea, no me gustaba que las palabras que yo escribía, alguien más las estaba diciendo. And I can totally help people tweak their stuff, but I also felt like, I don't know, like it was deceiving a little bit. Like those were my words, but at the same time, it also just gave me anxiety because there was this whole approval process that I needed to go through. So eventually I was just like, yep, I love internal communications. I like the speaking part of it. I like putting events together for people, but I don't know if I really like the speech writing part of it. During my time here, I did an interview for a Spanish network in Spanish for the first time. Me trababan en mis palabras, o sea, no sabía ni qué decir, but it was so cool. I was given this opportunity, obviously, because at the time I was the only person in the freaking office that spoke Spanish that was there in person. And it was one of those things in the media happen really quickly and really last minute all the time. But it was like, hey, 20 minutes before we were going live or before we were doing it, they were like, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, I guess. So I got like a 5-minute PR training and just went for it. It was so much fun, and I was so proud of myself. And I learned how to say content in Spanish. Y se dice contenido. I also hosted Good Talks with Healthline, a talk show where I got to talk to a whole bunch of celebrities and interview them about their health habits and creativity and all these fun themes, and it was so cool. That was actually what inspired me to start Chats with Yvonne, because I was like, wow, okay, I really actually love public speaking. I'm good at it. I've been doing it for a while, and I want other people to not feel as nervous and to see that there are opportunities for them in public speaking. So that's what started Chats with Yvonne. But the biggest lesson that I learned at Healthline was that people care about people, and people want to be talked to like they're people. And I try to use that in how I talk in public speaking engagements. When I go on the stage, I don't want to talk to you like you are this like crazy person that only understands jargony words. I want to talk to you like you're a person. I want to connect with you as a person. And so that's what I stand by, and that's what I do when I'm up on stage. Now, I know that this was a little bit of a longer segment, but I hope that you got something out of it. And this was a way, too, of reflecting, right? Reflecting on my jobs and how they've helped me become a better public speaker. Start thinking about where you are today and think about how you engage with the art every single day, because you do. There's no way that you don't. My goal in having this podcast is to let you and allow you to truly see public speaking in a different light. It isn't just a white man up on stage talking to you. It isn't just that professor that you see that seems to have all their shit together. You are public speaking every time you engage with someone in the spoken word. And who you are in those moments gives you a clue into who you are and who you could be as this incredible badass public speaker. So before we go, I want to leave you with this.
Follow your intuition. And what I mean by that is if something doesn't sit right with you, whether it be a job that was offered to you or career advice that was given to you, and there's a part of you that's like, but I really want to do this. Please follow that. There's so many times that I had an idea of what I wanted to do in regards to my education and how I went about that, in regards to my career and how I went about that. And when I would go and ask for advice, or get, whatever, I don't know, I can't even think of the word, whatever someone gave me, and I took that advice, I always regretted it. And you'll know when your intuition is telling you to do something different. And just remember that when advice is given to you, no one is trying to intentionally hurt you. They are just giving you advice from their perspective, from their best, what they wish someone told them. So take your intuition as what you wish someone told you.
Dr. Norma Reyes, thank you so much for being here and for dropping some insight to myself and all of our Chats with Yvonne podcast listeners. To our listeners, thank you so much for being here and for spending some time with us today. I truly appreciate it, and it makes me so happy because you're one step closer to really unpacking your experience with public speaking and getting out there and getting paid for what you do. If you don't already, feel free to follow Dr. Norma Reyes over on Manifest Your Career on Instagram. And if you don't, of course, follow Chats with Yvonne across all social platforms. I also have a YouTube channel and an Instagram, Twitter, a TikTok. TikTok is a little more fun, I would say. It's a little bit, it's just fun. It's just fun over on TikTok. So follow me over there if you'd like. Thank you so much y nos vemos en la próxima.